I wanted to talk a little bit about the submarine issue. Most of you have been following the news for the past week. You saw that the Ocean Gate is a company that offered for $250,000 approximately the opportunity to get into their little submersible, the little tiny sub, and go down and tour the wreckage of the Titanic on the bottom of the seafloor, the ocean floor. Well, obviously, we had tragedy recently where initially they lost contact with their submersible with a number of people on board, and then it eventually came out that the sub actually imploded, killing everyone on board. But what some of the news stories that actually kind of got to me and made me want to talk about it a little bit on the show, especially a Christian show that's meant to be talking to Christians, were more some articles about the response and the way a lot of people responded to what was seen in that what happened, the events that happened, how people responded online to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up a few articles here, and then we'll take a look at them so you can see what I'm talking about. This first one here, this is from NBC News, and it says, the search for Titanic submersible unleashes eat the rich sentiment online. As memes spread across social media, some said they felt the dark humor was ill-timed and in poor taste. And I'm not going to read the entire article, but I want to look at a few highlights if you're not familiar with the story. And this is by Saba Hamedi. Like I said, this is NBC News, published on June 22nd. She says, at first, news that a submersible had gone missing during a voyage to the Titanic wreckage site ignited a wave of shock and concern. The 5 people on board, now presumed dead, faced a dwindling oxygen supply in a harsh and unforgiving environment deep underwater. But as more details emerged about the wealth of those on board, the known concerns with the Titan submersible, and comments from the CEO that seemed to disregard safety, empathy gave way to crass humor, with memes mocking the victims appearing across platforms, including Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. And then the article goes on to give a few examples here. It's crazy to think we might only have another 30 hours or so of being able to make fun of the people on the submarine, said one TikTok user in a video uploaded Tuesday that has 1.4 million views. All right. And then, interesting note here, it says research has shown that many use humor and memes to cope with tragedy. But as jokes surrounding the missing vessel circulated online, some said they felt the dark humor was ill-timed and in poor taste, given that the rescue operation was ongoing. I don't know why it would be in poor taste even after the rescue operation was over. But hey, it is what it is. And then there's another article here from Fox News here that gives a few more examples of some of the memes. Like here's one that was posted with, the killer whale says, I have nothing to say but eat the rich. And next time some rich white person wants to take Sam Alito on an expensive trip, please tell him to take him to see the Titanic. I mean, hopefully, as Christians, we can see that some of this is just woefully inappropriate. Matter of fact, I had a couple others here that I was going to pull up that I found online. We have this one that I saw. We all died in a homemade submarine, a homemade submarine, a homemade submarine. Which obviously is a reference to the Beatles song Yellow Submarine, Yellow Submarine. And then there's also this one, Alexa, play Air Supply. I mean, I would hope that we can all agree that these are frankly disgusting. These are appalling type of images. But the deeper question is, why are people reacting this way? And what is appropriate for us as Christians? I mean, I don't know if anybody out there has, had any, if you've come across any of these memes and how you reacted to them, or if you posted any of these memes. But that's kind of why I wanted to bring it up. Because, you've probably heard a million times, we're supposed to be in the world, but not of the world. And so is this one of those instances where we should be thinking about how we should be reacting to this type of thing when we see it go on? And I saw this article here. This was, again, another article on Fox News that was talking about a psychologist explaining why she thinks anyway, people were finding humor in these memes. And keep in mind, this isn't like one of the other ones I mentioned. This isn't even after the submarine was recovered. This was while we still didn't know whether or not it was going to be recovered, or I should say, what it was before the remnants of the submarine were recovered. It was before we even knew. So we were kind of had this. The media kind of created this ticking clock where we're like, tick, tick, tick. Is it going to? Are they going to run out of air? Are they going to run out of air? And while this is going on, and while, as far as we knew, people could very well have been suffering and potentially getting close to suffocation, that's when all these memes that I was showing you were circulating and were going around. And so we have this article here where it says the psychologist explains these online attacks against victims of the Titanic sub-tragedy by saying our culture lacks empathy. And I'm going to scroll down past all of the details of what happened. We've talked about that already. But here's a couple other ones. We talked about the Eat the Rich one. It says, why does it seem so hard to feel sorry here for the rich people that might die in that submersible? That was one Reddit thread that asked. And then here's what the psychologist actually says. Her name is Michelle Solomon. She says, highlight this right here. Too far. Let's go up, go up, go up, go up. There we go. Take a look at this. She says, I really think right now our culture lacks a lot of empathy. And I have to look at these social media companies. These big tech companies created these social media platforms for fast scrolling. They care about time online, not time well spent, said clinical psychologist Michelle Solomon. And it's a problem because the younger generation who spends hours online, they're the ones that are going to be carrying on our society. That's problematic. That's scary. She referred to a feature such as fast scrolling on social media, meaning flipping through reels, videos, and images on recommended pages tailored for a user's interests as a recipe for disaster. And when you're fast scrolling on social media, you're disconnecting from your feelings. You're disconnecting from the part of you that has empathy for another person, even well-intentioned people, she said. If you're scrolling fast enough and you're not disconnecting from what actually happened, you would find something funny. And then you'd scroll on to the next thing without processing it. And here's why I bring this up. I mean, I don't know whether or not there's any support for her theory that, it's the fast scrolling through social media that leads to this. I mean, I can certainly see her point that when we're going through this information so quickly, where we live in a clickbait culture, right? Where you're just clicking on this headline to that headline to that headline, that we never really take the time to process what we're reading. And oh my gosh, I can't tell you as a Christian apologist how often I see this. So many of our views, of our opinions are held. I got to think without thinking them through. People hold so many beliefs that are they completely contradict each other. And a lot of them just aren't well reasoned whatsoever. And I think a lot of that is because of what she's talking about, this fast scrolling culture, this mentality, where we don't take the time to process. We don't take the time to think. We might see a headline that is something that we want to agree with, we want to be true. And so we just convince ourselves it is true without actually thinking it through and seeing if the logic actually holds up. A similar thing could be going on here where we see something that we find funny initially, but we never take the time to process whether it really is funny or whether it's something we should be laughing at. And so we go on and we repost these memes, or maybe some people even make them themselves. And I got to say that I do think, regardless of whether or not this whole idea of fast scrolling is what's contributing to it, I do think she has an absolutely legitimate point in the sense that we are seeing growing more and more daily in our culture a lack of empathy, where people do not seem to find anything wrong with just being openly disrespectful and mocking of other people's oftentimes most preciously held beliefs. I had somebody that I am acquainted with, I'm not going to get too specific. I don't want to call anybody out here online. But this individual had moved into a new home and was decorating this home and had indicated that they were going to decorate their guest bathroom, okay, the bathroom that's designed for their guests to come into, all right, in a manner that they openly admitted. They said point blank, I know that this manner of me decorating is going to highly offend a large number of my guests. That several of my guests are going to find this just to be completely offensive. But the individual went on to say, but I don't care because I think it's funny. All right. I think it's funny. And that's the kind of thing that I think also is contributing to these memes that we're seeing circulating around about this tragedy, is that people lack empathy. They're finding humor in things that, frankly, they shouldn't be finding humor in. We've lost the ability to empathize with other people, and whether we agree with them or not. And what's I guess not so surprising, but part of that is, of course, when we all want people to empathize with us. More these same people that you'll see posting these memes and telling these jokes and doing these things that they know are going to offend other people just because they find them humorous. If you do something that they consider wrong to them, they'll be the first ones to turn around and say, oh, well, that was wrong. You shouldn't do that. That's not the right way to treat me. Well, I don't know, other than obviously we're all sinful, and we're maybe getting closer to when Jesus is going to return. I don't know that. Nobody knows that. But it is a disturbing trend that I'm seeing, and it is certainly a trend that is not what we as Christians should be doing. All right. This should go without saying, right? Just a couple of scriptures here that I'm going to pull up. This is Luke chapter 6, verses 27 through 28. This is Jesus talking. But to you who are listening, I say, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who mistreat you. Obviously, if you take Jesus' words seriously as a Christian, then that should tell you no matter how you feel about it. Maybe you hate all rich people. I don't think you should, but maybe you do. All right. Even if you hate all rich people, you should still be loving them. That maybe sounds like some of a contradiction to say if you hate them, you should love them. You're right. You should love them. Love is an action. It's something you do. But we as Christians, clearly based upon Jesus' command here, should not be participating in this type of thing. And we certainly should not be creating these types of memes. We should not be openly mocking people just to get some kind of enjoyment out of their offense, out of their displeasure. And we shouldn't even be sharing. We really should be checking ourselves. If we find ourselves laughing at this type of stuff, then yeah, that's probably something that we should be repenting for. When you're saying your prayers to God and you're confessing your sins, then that is something that you should be confessing. Why? Well, you look at Genesis 1:27. What's it say? So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. All of us are made in the image of God, and that comes with a certain amount of dignity that every person possesses. Now, does that mean everyone's saved? No, of course it doesn't. All right. But it does tell us as Christians how we should be treating other people. 1 Peter 3:15, I didn't put this one on the screen, but, tells us that, always be prepared to give an answer to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that you have, but do this with gentleness and respect. And that's something that I do think that we as the Christian church sometimes lose sight of, that we maybe haven't been doing as good of a job with that as we should, that we sometimes allow ourselves to get caught up in the spirit of the world and do things that the world says is okay. And we think that this is an appropriate way for us to evangelize, for us to spread the faith. And no, many times the answer is no, it's not an appropriate way to be spreading the faith. And it's not all harmless fun. That's another thing you hear all the time. Oh, it's just harmless fun. Why can't we just have a little bit of fun here? I'm just joking. It's just joking. Just take, you're so stuffy, don't be so serious, lighten up. We hear all those types of things all the time. But it's not just something that's that's light and harmless. If you're finding yourself finding amusement in someone else's misfortune, then there's a problem with that. So anyway, that's what I wanted to say when I was reading those articles about the reaction that people have had. I just wanted to make sure that I kind of came on here and talked about any Christians that are watching and saying, no, that's not appropriate. We shouldn't be participating in that. no matter how you feel about the people who were in that submarine, we shouldn't be celebrating their suffering. We shouldn't be celebrating their deaths. And we certainly should not be making light of it and mocking it and trying to brush it all off. It's like, oh, ha, 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 it's just a joke. How would you feel if you were the one in the submarine and you came in, if we had rescued them, for example, and they came out and they found out this is how our culture was reacting when they were in there? Is that treating people with the dignity and respect that they deserve as being made in the image of God? I say no. I say no.